You come any closer and I'm liable to stick you with my sticking knife. Old Stick is feeling mighty ornery this day.
The New Vegas Iceberg is massive. Unlike Fallout 4's, which we just covered in depth, New Vegas has hundreds of theories and obscure things that can be found in the game. We looked at a ton of icebergs online and we mashed them together so that we could explain them all. Turns out if we did that in one go, it would easily be over 3 hours. So instead, we're going to be making 3 New Vegas Iceberg videos. Don't worry though, they're not parts. This video is a full iceberg from the tip to the bottom layer, and so will be the other videos. So if your personal favorite theory isn't in this one, then consider subbing because it'll most likely be in the next. We're also planning to cover Fallout 3's iceberg as well, and you don't want to miss that. Enjoy.
Here's something a lot of Fallout fans have wondered. Why can't you keep playing after the Battle of Hoover Dam? Well, originally Obsidian did consider post-game content, but it was scrapped for a surprising reason. According to the devs, per Eurogamer, we put a lot of effort into the ending slides. We know those slides are really popular with people, so we want to make sure there's a huge amount of variety and reactivity with that stuff. Initially, we talked about trying to support post-gameplay, but because the changes that can happen at the end of the game are pretty major, this is what it basically came down to. Either have the changes feel really major in the end slides and then have them not be very major after the end of the game, or make them really minor and not that impactful. Senior producer Jason Bergman added to Destructoid, quote, "We tell the full story of every one of your companions through the end of their lives. And it's weird to do all that and then jump back and say, okay, now you can keep going again," quote. The devs wanted the ending to actually mean something and have the story continue. It'd be kind of like finishing a novel and then trying to reopen it and write a few more chapters. The story's over and your impact has been sealed.
The legate is crowned as the new Caesar. He entered the Strip as though it was a military target, destroying anyone who resisted him.
In addition, a package courier found shot in the head near Good Springs has reportedly regained consciousness and made a full recovery. Now that's a delivery service you can count on.
Mr. New Vegas is an AI. This one's really easy to miss if you're just tuning in for the tunes, but it's officially confirmed. Mr. New Vegas, the smooth talking DJ you hear across the Mojave, isn't a real person at all. He's actually an artificial intelligence created by Mr. House himself before the bombs fell. Designed to be the voice of New Vegas, he's been broadcasting non-stop ever since. Calm, polite, and always weirdly upbeat no matter how bad things get out there. What makes this interesting is that the game never tells you this outright. There's no moment where the courier finds a robot or terminal that spills the beans, but a pre-release Bethesda blog casually drops the detail, calling him, quote, literally just a voice, quote. And a USA Today interview with Wayne Newton, who voices Mr. New Vegas, backs it up too. Wayne stated that Mr. New Vegas is interesting because he's just a voice on the radio. He has no body. He was created by Mr. House, so he's literally just a voice. He tells what's going on in the world and he's always upbeat, and he has some very bizarre lines. So if you didn't know, the rumors are confirmed. New Vegas is purely AI.
This one's not confirmed in-game, but it's one of those fan theories that just feels plausible enough to make you wonder. You'll find the Lonesome Drifter sitting alone by a billboard, guitar in hand, looking like a young, wandering Johnny Cash. When you talk to him, he mentions he's out looking for his father. A mysterious fella, he says. A stranger, even. And if you recruit him for the talent pool quest and pass a barter check, he gives you the Mysterious Magnum, a revolver that literally plays the mysterious stranger's theme music when drawn. That's not exactly subtle. Dig a little deeper and it gets even more interesting. In an old developer interview, Josh Sawyer mentioned that if he had more development time, they wanted to script an event where if you attacked the Lonesome Drifter, the mysterious stranger himself would show up and defend him. It never made it in, but the idea definitely adds fuel to the theory. Whether it's just a clever Easter egg type of scenario or a scrap story thread, the clues are all there. Maybe the Drifter's just a guy with a guitar. Or maybe he's got a little VATS-powered family legacy behind him. What do you think? Back when Fallout New Vegas launched, pre-ordering from different retailers actually scored you different gear packs. And while none of them were game-breaking, they definitely gave you a leg up in the Mojave. There were 4 in total, and let me just say that this was a peak video game buying experience. I kind of miss the days of having to choose where I'm having to drive in order to buy the game and feeling like I could go talk about it with friends at school. Back when lines around GameStop formed for highly anticipated games. But back to the story. GameStop gave you a classic pack with a patched up Vault 13 suit, a weathered 10mm pistol, and the iconic Vault 13 canteen to keep hydration in check. Amazon had the Tribal Pack, complete with Raider armor, a broad machete, and throwing spears. Steam and Walmart players got the Caravan Pack featuring lightweight leather armor, binoculars, and a sturdy shotgun built for the road. And finally, Best Buy gave you the Mercenary Pack with sleek metal armor and fast reloading grenade rifle, and enough medical supplies to keep your limbs intact after an encounter with a super mutant. Each pack had its own vibe, and while none were essential, they made those early hours in the wasteland just feel a bit more personalized. We felt this one was worth mentioning since the video game buying experience has evolved over time, and many newer Fallout fans never got to experience buying New Vegas in the OG days. Two Bears High-Fiving is a tribal living in the Zion Canyon in the Honest Hearts DLC. If you've got the Wild Wasteland trait right before you meet Joshua Graham, this guy walks out of Angel Cave, pumps his fist in the air like he made some type of accomplishment, and then he casually just walks back inside. That's it. No epic speech, no quest, just his tribal fist-pumping glory. He spouts the usual dead horse one-liners, but what's the real story here? The character is a reference to a mod that changes one of the available options to Two Bears High-Fiving for the last Inkblot test during Ain't That a Kick in the Head. According to Josh Sawyer, this little moment was a team-wide decision. And honestly, it's a solid blink and you'll miss it Easter egg.
Beneath the glitz and neon of New Vegas, there's something a little more hidden, and a little more real. The Mojave Wasteland is laced with an extensive underground sewer system, accessible from manholes scattered around the map. These tunnels connect various parts of the city and serve as a sort of shadowy underbelly of New Vegas. You'll find feral ghouls, old maintenance rooms, and even scavengers down there. Ultimately, there's not a ton down here in terms of in-game assets, but what's wild is how closely this mirrors real-life Las Vegas. Underneath the actual strip, there's a massive network of storm drainage tunnels originally built to prevent flash floods in the desert, which occur quite often in monsoon season. Over time, these tunnels became known as the Homeless Tunnels, a hidden community where hundreds of people live off-grid, shielded from the brutal summer sun and the tourist surface world above. There's basically an entire economy in the city's underbelly, but we won't dive into that in this video. The point is this. In New Vegas, these underground routes reflect the duality, the city of lights built on top of a forgotten space filled with danger, survival, and people trying to carve out a life in the shadows. It's a subtle detail, but it shows just how deeply New Vegas was rooted in the real world it's loosely based on.
Finding it though, that's not the hard part. It's letting go.
Most players finish Dead Money by defying Father Elijah and escaping the Sierra Madre with their life, and maybe a few gold bars if they're clever. But there's a far more sinister and lesser known path hidden in the DLC. You can actually side with Father Elijah and help him unleash the Cloud and his hologram army across the Mojave. This ending is tucked away in the game's files and narration that was fully voiced and written by the devs. If you go along with Elijah's plan, the Mojave descends into a kind of apocalyptic second end of the world scenario.
In the years that followed, the legend of the Sierra Madre faded, and there were no new visitors to the city. Years later, when a mysterious blood-red cloud began to roll across the Mojave, then west toward the Republic, no one knew where it had come from. Only that it brought death in its wake. Attempts to find the source of the toxic cloud failed. The Mojave was cut off. Through the cloud, lights were seen from Helios 1. There were stories of ghosts immune to gunfire who struck down anyone they saw with rays of light. The last chapter of the Mojave came when a modified Repcon rocket struck Hoover Dam, releasing a blood-red cloud, killing all stationed there. All attempts to penetrate the cloud and retake the dam failed, and both the NCR and Legion finally turned away from it, citing the place as cursed. In the years that followed, the legend of the Sierra Madre faded, and there were no new visitors to the city. Only 2 remained alive in the depths of the cloud at the Sierra Madre, waiting for their new world to begin again.
The epilogue describes a blood-red cloud slowly rolling west from the Sierra Madre, swallowing everything in its path. The NCR patrols vanish. Helios 1 lights up with deadly beams, and rumors spread of a ghost immune to gunfire. The holograms now roaming the Mojave. Eventually, a modified Repcon rocket hits Hoover Dam, unleashing the cloud and wiping out all who remain. The NCR and Legion abandon the region, declaring it cursed. In the end, only 2 people survive, you and Father Elijah, sealed away in the toxic heart of the Sierra Madre, waiting for your new world to begin. It's one of the darkest possible futures in the Fallout universe, and it shows just how far the writing in Dead Money was willing to go, if you were willing to follow it into madness. You didn't think we'd only give one of the alternate endings to Dead Money, did you? If you get too greedy, if you give in to the siren song of the Sierra Madre's vault and fail to escape, you unlock one of the darkest and most philosophical endings in the entire series. In this rarely seen outcome, the Courier becomes trapped inside the Sierra Madre vault, sealed forever behind layers of pre-war security, gold, and desperation. Over time, they die alone, entombed beneath the casino. But that's not where this story ends. The Sierra Madre doesn't forget them. In a final twist, the casino's systems create a new hologram, a flickering specter known in your own image. Originally intended for someone else, it now becomes a walking, glowing echo of the person who came seeking treasure and never left. The line hits really hard, quote, "a means of allowing even the dead to begin again," end quote. Some fans interpret this ending as the Courier being immortalized by the Sierra Madre, not remembered but repurposed. Others see it as a metaphor for greed, obsession, or the danger of chasing legacy in a world that has no room for it anymore. Either way, it means that you become a ghost, a pre-programmed puppet trapped in a gilded tomb, doomed to patrol the halls of a place that feeds on hope and memory. You don't get credits, no parade, no resolution, just flickering blue light and an eternity of silence.
The Courier, lured by the promise of the Sierra Madre, could not escape. Once inside the vault, the casino did not let go. When the Courier finally passed away, the casino created a new hologram to walk with the other ghosts that filled its casino. It was a pre-programmed homage intended for another. It assumed a new meaning in the likeness of the Courier, a means of allowing even the dead to begin again.
Ever wonder what lies past the invisible walls of the Mojave? Well, if you break free of the map's borders, you'll find something strange. 15 to 20 minutes worth of fully rendered terrain, complete with hills, dried riverbeds, winding paths, and even a few scattered ruins. What's odd is that none of this land is used in the main game or any of the DLCs. There's no quests, no enemies, no markers, just an eerily quiet, detailed geography that serves no immediate purpose. It's as if the developers were planning something out there and then abandoned it. Or maybe it was meant to sell the illusion of an open world you can't fully reach. Some fans believe it was intended for cut content, maybe an early NCR outpost or a planned DLC that was never realized. Others think that it was just there to make the Mojave feel bigger and more real. The most likely reason I could tell you from research is that the game was simply supposed to be bigger and was designed to be more scaled, but we never got that bigger version. Whatever the reason is, it adds a surreal, liminal feel when you explore it, like walking into the backstage of the game's reality. If you've ever wandered into the Vicky and Vance casino early in New Vegas and wondered why nothing seems to happen, like no gambling, no working cashier, no action, you're not alone. A lot of players assume it's just an unfinished or broken area, but it's actually working exactly as intended. It just takes a lot of patience. The casino, named after the Bonnie and Clyde inspired duo Vicky and Vance, was once Primm's big draw, Las Vegas on a budget. But after the Powder Gangers overran the town and killed the sheriff, the residents locked themselves inside the casino for safety, and then all the gambling operations shut down. So here's the cool part. After completing the quest My Kind of Town and installing a new sheriff, the casino doesn't just magically reopen. You have to wait in-game for at least 1 to 2 days. Then a scripted event triggers. A group of bumbling NCR deserters try to take over the casino, and then you'll have to deal with them. After that, wait 3 more in-game days, and finally the casino floor comes back to life. The slot machines will activate, the cashier opens up, and you can finally gamble your caps away under the neon lights. It's one of those mechanics that flies under the radar for most players, especially because there's no quest marker or formal objective pointing you to wait. But if you give it time, the Vickian Vance does reopen, and it becomes one of the earliest functioning casinos you can access in the game.
If you've ever been tuned into Radio New Vegas and heard Mr. New Vegas casually mention reports of a large object or creature spotted in the waters of Lake Mead, you might have thought you were hearing things, but no, you weren't. There's a real in-game broadcast describing grainy, underexposed photos of something massive lurking beneath the lake's surface, New Vegas's own Mojave Nessie. After completing the quest Valere, where the Courier helps the boomers raise a pre-war bomber from the bottom of Lake Mead, Mr. New Vegas returns with yet another broadcast. This time, he reports sightings of a strange creature within the lake, but chalks it up to Wastelanders misidentifying the recently surfaced plane. Still, that hasn't stopped fans and in-game myth hunters from taking the story seriously. The idea of something ancient, mutated, or unnatural living beneath the calm waters of Lake Mead taps right into the post-apocalyptic folklore of the wasteland. Whether it's a clever narrative red herring or the start of something deeper Obsidian never followed up on, the Lake Mead monster remains one of New Vegas's most subtle and strangely believable urban legends. Tucked away in the far north of the Mojave, just south of Nellis Air Force Base, there's a strange, half-finished location that never quite made it into the final version of New Vegas. Known only as Underpass, it was originally planned to be a small settlement with its own mayor, quest lines, citizens, and a malfunctioning water purifier. In the final game, it's little more than a quiet, barren area filled with mad Brahmin, but the leftover data tells a much deeper story. Game files reveal that Underpass had a full faction, 6 named citizens, and a mayor named Meg Reynolds, complete with early voice dialogue and AI packages for sleeping and wandering. One notable resident was Carlisle St. Clair III, a character who doesn't quite fit in and is even mentioned in the Beyond the Beef quest flowchart in the game's official guide. You were originally supposed to track him down in Underpass as part of the quest. There's also a quest stub called V Freeform Underpass, which involved fixing the town's water purifier. Scripted message boxes like the Underpass water repaired message still exist, even though the purifier itself is missing. There's also a strange ranch house nearby, stocked with maize and moonshine stills, all of it marked as property of the now defunct Underpass faction. If you try to enter it with the original NPCs still enabled, they'd actually turn hostile on you. By the time New Vegas shipped, most of Underpass had been stripped down, and the area was seemingly repurposed by simply dropping in some mad Brahmin to fill the empty space. But the ghost of a full town, complete with politics, problems, and side quests, is still there in the game's DNA. One thing is for certain, we'd all die for Doc Mitchell. What you may have not considered before is that depending on your player's stats that you boost, Doc Mitchell will elicit a different phrase. I won't try and do voice work for what he says because nobody can deliver it quite like Doc. So sit back and enjoy.
Surprised anybody'd want to tangle with you. Heck, you could go Deathclaw hunting with a switch. Nothing gets by you, huh? Could've used you when I lost my keys last month. I guess that explains how you're still alive. You're built solid as an oak. Good to see them bullets didn't affect your charm none. Look at that. Maybe them bullets done your brain some good. Most patients don't get out of bed after being shot and then move like they was in perfect control. You're unusual, I'll say that. With luck like yours, I'm surprised them bullets didn't just turn right around and climb back into the gun.
The fort might be already one of the more unsettling places in New Vegas due to its slaves and crucifixions, but what's really weird is how much content was planned for the Legion and was quietly cut. For starters, there was a scrap quest involving poisoned meat tied to a character named Siri, a slave girl who would have been found near a Brahmin pen. The player could investigate a diseased Brahmin, convince Siri to give them the meat, and then you could use it to poison the Legion's stew. Messages like these still exist in the files, and there's even dialogue from a Nightkin reacting to the aftermath, saying head voices wonder why bulldoggies die. hinting at a slow infectious spread. Sadly, there's no finished script to actually carry out the poisoning. It was all left half-built, with items like infected Brahmin meat even being shuffled over to the Ultralux later. Even the fort itself was meant to be larger. There's clear nav meshing and pathing that suggests the player could once explore the outer tent camp, not just the gated area. Slaves were supposed to carry supplies between the two, walking physical paths rather than just teleporting in and out of existence. And then there's Benny. Originally, once captured by Caesar, he was going to be locked in a literal cage. There are scripts and cut dialogue that support this, including an unused encounter where if he was freed, he would sneak up on you using a stealth boy. He'd then confront you and he'd open fire. No talking him down, just a final showdown. That entire sequence was scrapped, probably to keep Benny's fate more open-ended, but the leftovers are still there. Down to the mismatch between the voice lines and subtitles where he was supposed to say, "Thanks for getting me out of that cage." Then you have this file called Fort Shells Created, which suggests at one point you could forge phosphorus shells, possibly for the howitzer, maybe as part of a Legion artillery upgrade that never materialized. All in all, the fort was meant to be more than just a static hub. It was supposed to feel alive, dirty, and dangerous, but what was left out might have made it truly unforgettable. Did you know that there are legendary versions of creatures in New Vegas that you can hunt down? The legendary bloatfly in Old World Blues is a shockingly powerful enemy, dealing 300 damage per shot, equal to an alpha deathclaw, and it boasts twice the health of a legendary one. It hovers just out of melee range, fires plasma-like projectiles, and then it explodes on death, leaving only goo. Easily one of the deadliest and most absurd enemies in the series. The legendary fire gecko is found in the Fire Root Cavern, and it's about twice the size of a regular fire gecko. It's extremely fast and it hits hard, making it a serious threat in close combat, even though it does look pretty goofy. And then you have the legendary Deathclaw, which is the deadliest creature in the Mojave, found deep within Deadwind Cavern. It deals double the damage of a normal Deathclaw, and it's flanked by 2 more when encountered. You'll find a fallen Brotherhood of Steel soldier near him, clutching the unique grade launcher Mercy, which shows just how lethal this beast is. Unlike the others in the cave, he doesn't respawn, so once you kill him, he'll stay dead. There are 2 other creatures, Shandy a Night Stalker and Specimen 73, that are kind of considered legendary with their stats, but they don't have the moniker, so I figured I'd just give them a little shout out. So Prospectors are basically the Wasteland's version of treasure hunters. Not gold or gems though. They're after old world tech, weapons, caps, and anything they can find in pre-war ruins. These folks are usually just regular people, not trained soldiers. Most of them are just NCR citizens or settlers or drifters, who figured scavenging was a better option than farming or signing up for a faction. You'll run into a few of them in the game. There's the Prospector in Novak hanging around with a drink and some regrets. Another one shows up in Primm near the Vicky and Vance casino. There's a few more that appear out in the wild. Some are alive and some are not so lucky. You'll often find their bodies in places like vaults or Deathclaw nests, places no sane person would go unless they were desperate or had a death wish. And don't let me forget everyone's favorite, Easy Pete and Good Springs. They're not part of any big group or faction, they're just individuals trying to get by. Sometimes you can talk to them, and then other times you find what's left of them and pick through their loot. It's a tough life, but in places like the Mojave, a lot of people figure it's worth the risk.
There's a handful of greasers down in the sewers causing trouble. They ain't packing too much iron, but I'd like them dealt with all the same.
The Greasers are a small-time gang you can run into, hanging out in the North Sewers beneath North Vegas Square. They're led by a guy named Greasy Johnny, and while they're not a huge threat like the Fiends or Powder Gangers, they've been causing enough trouble for the locals that someone wants them gone. There's basically this guy who acts like a neighborhood watch for the area and gives you the quest, "Someone to watch over me," to deal with the problem. When it comes to dealing with the Greasers, you've got a few options. You can go in guns blazing, of course, and just wipe them out. Or, if you're more diplomatic, you can talk Johnny into leaving peacefully with a decent speech check of 65.
Oh yeah? Fuck off, asshole.
There's also a barter route where you can bribe him with 100 caps, or 50 if your barter skill is high enough. It's super easy to miss these guys, so that's why I think a lot of icebergs have them on their list. If you decide to kill Mr. House, you'll receive a note titled, "A tragedy has befallen all mankind." This note serves as an obituary, detailing House's life and accomplishments. It highlights his role as the founder of Robco Industries, his foresight in preparing Las Vegas for nuclear war, and his efforts to rebuild the city post-war. The note shows the belief that House was humanity's best hope for survival and progress. Also, it seems like it was written in a tone that suggests House himself authored it, possibly as a preemptive eulogy, given phrases like, "We'll revise and finish this up later." You guys can pause if you want to read the whole thing. It's where we get a lot of background information on House. But I will say that it feels like a biased piece because he probably did write it, saying things like he was cheated out of his fortune, and was that really the case, or are there more nuances to that story? Pretty interesting though. All Roads is a graphic novel that serves as a prologue to Fallout New Vegas, offering deeper insights into key characters and events leading up to the game's opening. Released with the game's collector's edition and later digitally by Dark Horse Comics, it was written by Chris Avallone, a senior designer for New Vegas, with cover art by Mr. Darrow. The story takes place a week before the main game's events, focusing on Benny. He is orchestrating a plan to seize control of New Vegas from Mr. House. To achieve this, he collaborates with a group of great cons, including characters like Jessup, McMurphy, and Chance. Their mission? Intercept you carrying the mysterious platinum chip. Then you have Chance, a great con that was deeply scarred by the Bitter Springs massacre. He's portrayed as a troubled soul battling severe PTSD and substance abuse. His internal struggles and tragic are explored, shedding light on the complexities of the great con's experiences and motivations. It dives into the internal dynamics of the chairman. The singer, a former tribe member turned lounge performer at the Top's Casino, becomes a focal point. His nostalgia for the tribe's nomadic past and influence over other members pose a threat to Benny's vision, leading to a calculated and fatal intervention. It's an awesome piece of New Vegas lore that is pretty much overlooked by anyone especially playing these days. If you love Fallout or New Vegas, then I would highly recommend that you try and give this a read at least once. There's even locations in the game that are direct aftermaths of what happened within the story.
There's a hidden challenge perk called Mead of the Champions that offers a unique but kind of disgusting way to boost your stats. To unlock the perk, you first need to have the Cannibal perk, which allows you to consume human corpses. Then you have to go a step further and feast on the bodies of 4 key figures: Caesar, Mr. House, the King, and President Kimball. Once you've done the culinary tour of the Mojave's most influential leaders, the Mead of Champions perk grants you a temporary boost of +1 luck, intelligence, charisma, and even strength for 60 seconds after consuming any human corpse. It's a dark path to power, but in the wasteland, sometimes you have to eat your way to the top. In Honest Hearts, the Ghost of She is a unique Yao Guai, residing in Zion Canyon's ghost den. According to the Sorrows tribe lore, a curious young girl ventured into a cave inhabited by a Yao Guai and was killed. The tribe believes that since she died before receiving a name, her spirit merged with the beast, leading to the legend of the Ghost of She. During the Rite of Passage quest, the Sorrow shaman Whitebird tasks you with consuming a sacred datura root concoction, inducing hallucinogenic effects, and then hunting the Ghost of She to retrieve its paw. You then experience visual distortions due to the tea, and upon confronting the Ghost of She, the beast appears engulfed in flames and can create multiple copies of itself during battle. After defeating it and returning the paw to Whitebird, you're rewarded with She's Embrace, a unique Yao Guai gauntlet. I guess the deeper theory here is, what really is this thing? Why is it on fire and can separate into clone things? Maybe it is the ghost of the little girl fused with the bear. Or more likely, you're just having a full-blown trip thanks to the goof juice. Who knows? So Ulysses. A lot of people don't know that he was originally supposed to be something very different. Your companion. Yes, Ulysses was originally written as a recruitable character in the base game. He would have joined you like Boone, Veronica, or Arcade Gannon, and acted as kind of a living lens into Caesar's Legion. Unlike most companions who either hated the Legion or were largely neutral, Ulysses would have given you insight into what the Legion stood for, its goals, and why people might choose to follow Caesar. He wasn't just a mouthpiece though. He had his own past, his own disillusionments, and a unique worldview that made him stand out among the rest of the cast. Unfortunately, according to Josh Sawyer, Ulysses had so much dialogue and depth that he simply couldn't fit on the disc. Literally. He had to be cut late into development, and it's something the dev team reportedly regretted. His character was just too ambitious for the game's technical limits at the time. But instead of scrapping him entirely, the developers saved Ulysses for Lonesome Road. There he reappears not as a friend, but a philosophical foil to the Courier. He blames you for the destruction of the Divide, challenges your choices throughout the game, and acts as a final reckoning for everything your character has done. In a way, even though he wasn't your companion in the base game, Lonesome Road turns him into something more, an ideological equal, and one of the Courier's few true peers in the Wasteland. So while we never got to have Ulysses as a companion walking at our side, we still got to hear his voice just from the other end of the road. If you didn't already love Fantastic, then this might change your mind. When you hand over Helios 1 to Caesar, you'll come back and find Fantastic. Well, it's probably best if I just show you.
Hey man, when in Rome.
After completing the heist at the Sierra Madre, you can return to the abandoned Brotherhood of Steel Bunker. There, in Father Elijah's quarters, you'll find a terminal with a locked holo message labeled "For Veronica." This message is of course intended for Veronica, your companion and Elijah's former apprentice. The holo message is secured with a sensor that ensures only Veronica can access it. If you bring Veronica to the terminal and allow her to read the message, she gains the Elijah's Last Words perk, enhancing her melee attack by 150% and giving her melee attacks a 25% chance to knock down enemies. Alternatively, if you choose to access the message yourself, you receive the Elijah's Ramblings perk, which increases your melee critical hit damage by 150%. We don't actually know exactly what the message says, but it does give Veronica some interesting dialogue about her past with Elijah. When near certain graveyards like Good Spring Cemetery and Camp Forlorn Hope, you'll hear these ghostly whispering sounds, especially during nighttime. At Good Spring Cemetery, you can find ghostly voices and unsettling noises. Some speculate that these sounds are more than just environmental effects, suggesting that they may be linked to the graves or even your actions, like digging up graves with a shovel. Similarly, at Camp Forlorn Hope's graveyard, there are ghost whispers which seem to serve as reminders of the lives lost in the ongoing conflict. Now, on this channel, we've talked about ghosts being confirmed in the Fallout franchise. Like, it's pretty much a no thing now, guys. So this probably really is the whispering of ghosts, or just a little Easter egg for the graveyards. The weapon binding ritual in Honest Hearts is one of those weird tribal concoctions that seems like superstition at first glance. Yet, somehow, it works. On paper, it's a combat enhancer, giving you a solid boost to melee and unarmed damage while also healing your limbs, which is super handy in hardcore mode. It even kind of mimics Psycho, except it's not addictive and has this very ritualistic ceremonial vibe. Now, if you look at the ingredients, knife, leather belt, wonder glue, healing powder, it definitely seems weird. The knife and leather belts, they don't exactly scream medicine. But that's kind of the point. The ritual isn't just about chemistry, but maybe it's about belief, placebo, and the power of preparing for battle in a way that mentally primes you to fight like a beast. The knife seems to be purely symbolic. It's used to make a small cut, nothing fatal, just enough to get the blood pumping. The leather belt probably acts like a makeshift tourniquet tightening around the arm to restrict blood flow temporarily. Then, the wound gets packed with healing powder and wonder glue, which sounds ridiculous, but in a wasteland filled with mutated plants and post-war chemistry, it just might create a numbing stimulant-like reaction. Once the belt comes off and blood flows again, it likely pushes the mixture through the system fast, giving you a head rush, dulling pain, and boosting adrenaline. And yeah, there's definitely a ritualistic placebo effect at play here. Tribes doing this together, hyping each other up with chants or shared belief, would only amplify the results. Group psychology is a powerful thing, especially when you're walking into a fight feeling like you're invincible. The part that doesn't quite add up is the limb healing. It's not just pain relief, it actually repairs damage. That's where things get a little more supernatural, or maybe there's just something in Zion's healing powder that we don't fully understand. Either way, it's another example of Fallout's mix of strange science and wasteland mysticism working together in weird, surprisingly effective ways. Basically, we have no idea how it works, but as Todd always says,
all of this just works.
They're here. Don't let them get the antidote. Oh, it's just you. You can't have it either.
This is an age-old theory at this point. Nobark Noonan is one of those unforgettable side characters in New Vegas. The local kook of Novak, spouting off wild conspiracies about lizard men, invisible ghouls, and brain-stealing machines. Most players just chalk him up as some comic relief, the crazy old guy in a tinfoil hat. But there is a running theory that he's not just some random eccentric. Some fans believe that Nobark is actually the chosen one, the protagonist of Fallout 2 decades after their adventure. It does sound ridiculous at first, until you start looking at the little details. First off, the timeline fits. Fallout 2 takes place in 2241 and New Vegas is set in 2281. That's a 40-year gap. If the Chosen One was in their late teens or early 20s during Fallout 2, they'd be in their 60s or early 70s by the time of New Vegas, which seems about the age Nobark appears to be. It's in the right ballpark at least. Then there's his knowledge on weird specific things. A lot of Nobark's ramblings sound like nonsense, until you realize some of them line up eerily well with events from past games. He talks about government experiments, secret conspiracies, creatures from pre-war labs, all stuff the Chosen One actually encountered. He even seems unusually well versed in Enclave tech and behavior, despite supposedly being just another random drifter in Novac. Another big point is that Nobark has survived all sorts of chaos, including living in a town crawling with feral ghouls, rad scorpions, and random mercs. For someone who seems so unhinged, he's surprisingly resourceful. That tracks with someone who canonically helped take down the Enclave and basically save the post-apocalyptic West Coast. Some fans speculate that Nobark's madness might actually be PTSD, or intentional rambling to keep people at a distance. Like maybe he wants people to think he's harmless. But the biggest pieces of evidence are the wrecked Highwayman, which is a car that looks exactly like the car you drive in Fallout 2 and is found near Novac. And then there's a gun that you can find in the Dino shop called That Gun, which looks almost exactly like the same gun the Chosen One carries in Fallout 2. How did all of these things end up in Novac? It's pretty weird. Of course, there's no direct confirmation. Obsidian hasn't said anything official, and it could all just be fans reading too deep into an amusing NPC. But the theory has stuck around for years because it's just plausible enough. Nobark could very well be a war hero lost to time, hiding behind rambling stories to keep the horrors of the past buried, and to keep anyone from asking too many questions. So next time you're in Novac, maybe listen a little closer to what Nobark is saying. It might not be all crazy after all. Gabban is a frumentarius, a spy and operative for Caesar's Legion. He steps into the spotlight under specific circumstances. If Vulpes Inculta, the Legion officer responsible for the massacre in Nipton, dies before the Courier arrives there, or before the quest Render under Caesar begins, Gabban instead takes his place. When you first enter Nipton under these conditions, Gabban approaches to explain the grim lesson that the Legion imparted on the town. His dialogue is the same as Vulpes, detailing the reason behind the town's destruction and the Legion's motives. Interestingly though, Gabban provides additional insights into the Legion, including information about Legate Lanius, the notorious monster of the East. It's pretty rare to even run into Gabban, and that's why a lot of people don't even know about him. So there's a few things here that point to the fact that Rex may have been Caesar's dog. The first is that if you bring Rex with you to the Legion camp and you talk to Antony, he'll say this:
"The mechanical dog you have with you, where did you get it?" "Oh? Such things are common in Denver, but I didn't know that other cities had them as well. I ask because Caesar once had a similar pet, but it was lost during a battle."
Then there's a dialogue option with Rex where you can inspect his body and it says something about the faded red bowl on the side. Also, if you complete Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog by transplanting Lupus's brain, the ending will say something about his new Legion memories molding well with his old Legion memories. These all seem pretty convincing that at the very least, Rex came from Denver, by the way of the Legion. Now, whether he's Caesar's personal dog is up for debate, but there's still more. If you take him with you to talk to Caesar, Caesar actually recognizes him. He says something like, "This dog is familiar. I had a dog like this once." It's one of those blink and you'll miss it lines, but it suggests there's a history between Caesar and Rex potentially. That's pretty wild considering Caesar rarely shows sentiment for anything, especially not an NCR style police dog. And if you ask him to help you fix Rex's brain, he'll basically never turn you down. Maybe it's because he's also dealing with his own brain stuff and he correlates it, but maybe he feels some sentiment, like I said before, about Rex. There is essentially a different way to get to Nellis Air Force Base without the classic bomb run. It was sort of scrapped in the development, but they kept it in and made it relatively hard to enter. There's an unmarked train tunnel, and this tunnel is located east of Raoul's shack and west of the Brotherhood of Steel safe house. Both entrances are secured with a very hard lock, requiring a lockpick skill of 100 to access. Inside, the tunnel is infested with feral ghouls, including some glowing ones, and it's lined with frag mines and bear traps. Making it through the tunnel allows you to approach Nellis Air Force Base from a less exposed position. potentially reducing exposure to the boomers' artillery bombardments. I've played this game for years and only recently learned about this place. It's insane just how much is going on in these games that you can miss.
Out in the Mojave, north of Griffinware's sacked caravan, there's a strange little spot called Brooks Tumbleweed Ranch. It's quiet, dusty, and full of, you guessed it, tumbleweeds. But if you wander up to the cattle pen on the north side of the ranch, things get weird really fast. A cloaked nightkin will suddenly uncloak himself and try to sell you a wind Brahmin. What's a wind Brahmin, you ask? According to this nightkin, it's one of those rolling tumbleweeds. Yes, he thinks the tumbleweeds are, quote, doggies, quote, and wants to sell you one for the low price of all of your caps. If you turn him down or make fun of the idea that the tumbleweeds aren't real animals, he'll get hostile and attack. You can try to play along, but the whole situation is designed to be pretty much against you. Originally, before a certain patch, if you agreed to buy a wind Brahmin without asking how much, the Nightkin would actually give you a free stealth boy. A pretty good deal, all things considered. But after patch 1.4, they changed that. Now, if you agree to buy one without questioning the price, he'll just take all your caps. No stealth boy, no refund, just a broke courier and a satisfied Nightkin rancher. The good news is, if you do end up finding and killing him, you can loot your caps back and snag his stealth boy while you're at it. Deep inside the old H&H Tools factory, you might come across a terminal with a strange option. Lucky 38 Executive Override. It sounds pretty important, like something that might unlock House's secrets or bring down his entire surveillance network. But if you try to trace what it actually does, you'll find absolutely nothing. No gameplay changes, no dialogue, and no follow-up. That's because this override, along with two others located at New Vegas Steel and House Resort near Camp Golf, was part of a cut version of the quest, The Moon Comes Over the Tower. Originally, the followers of the Apocalypse, through Emily, wanted you to do more than just slap a bug on a terminal inside Lucky 38. The plan was for you to access multiple override terminals, scattered across the Mojave first, and then weakening House's network so the bug could actually do something. These terminals still exist in the game world, but activating them doesn't advance the quest. And there's a ton of strange leftover data, like a VIP pass at the top of the H&H building and a locked flooded stairwell with high radiation leading up to a mysterious terminal room, seemingly built for more than just atmosphere. Even the VIP lounge terminal at the Lucky 38 has leftover scripting hints that it was meant to respond differently if the other overrides were activated. The final version of the quest? Way simpler. Emily appears after you leave the tops, asks for your help, and you walk into Lucky 38, hit a button on a terminal, and boom, 600 XP. The bug barely survives, and Emily thanks you, end of story. The originally planned multi-terminal quest line with deeper infiltration mechanics and potentially serious consequences for House's hold on the strip was never finished. Why was it scrapped? Maybe time, maybe complexity, maybe the devs thought it would mess up with the pacing. But the Lucky 38 Executive Override terminals remain in game, quiet, unused, and loaded with what-ifs. Most players have never heard of him, and you'll never see him in a normal playthrough. But tucked deep in the developer guts of New Vegas' final DLC, Lonesome Road, is a hidden NPC named Bill the Tax Collector, better known in the game files as the narrator for the DLC's ending slides. Bill isn't just some empty shell either. He's a fully defined NPC with his own stats, including hilariously a perfect 10 charisma, making him quite literally the most charming tax collector the Mojave never knew. He fills the same behind the scenes role as Ron the narrator, who delivers the main game's iconic ending narration. The difference is that while Ron has somewhat canon identity as a legendary Ron Perlman, Bill exists entirely in the background, never intended to be seen, just heard. Using console commands or glitching, you can summon him into the game world, and yep, he's just standing there, silently holding the weight of Lonesome Road's post-apocalyptic poetry. No voice lines, no interaction, just Bill. Why a tax collector? Nobody knows. Maybe it's a joke by the devs, a dig at bureaucracy, or maybe it's just a placeholder name they forgot to change. But in the end, Bill the Tax Collector is the unsung voice behind some of the Fallout universe's most emotionally heavy closing moments.
And this road has reached its end.
Near the irradiated pools of the Mesquite Mountains crater lies a place few players have ever stumbled into. a two-story structure known only as Hell's Motel. From the outside, it already lives up to its name. Constant radiation, roving feral ghouls, and bubbling toxic water. But inside, things get weirder. On the upper floor of this ruined building lies the body of Dr. Rotson, a non-feral ghoul. Nearby, you'll find an operating table and a crazed Mr. Handy. It paints a strange picture. One of a ghoul doctor working in total isolation, surrounded by ferals, and practically bathing in radiation. So what's the implication? Rotson was possibly running a makeshift medical clinic. But who was he treating? Definitely not humans. One theory is that Dr. Rotson was offering services specifically to other ghouls. The ferals outside may have once been patients or protectors before they lost their minds. The radiation-filled pools could have served as a kind of spa or recovery zone, since ghouls actually heal from radiation. Others think he was experimenting, maybe even trying to reverse feralism, and he either failed or he was betrayed by his own creations. The Mr. Handy gone rogue only adds to the sense that something went horribly wrong. The game offers no quests, no logs, no definitive answers. Just a doctor, a crater, and a motel soaked in death and decay. Hell's Motel is one of those quiet locations in New Vegas that feels like it used to have a story, but now only this remains. On the surface, the Coyotes is just another NCR side quest. Help the refugees, clean up some corruption, and then you move on. But dig a little deeper and what you find is one of the most unsettling storylines in Fallout New Vegas. And when viewed through a modern lens, it kind of mirrors elements of Epstein Island's scandal. You start at the Aerotech office park, where NCR officer Captain Parker is worried about missing refugees. One family, including a little girl with a teddy bear, has vanished without a trace. The trail leads to two shady scavengers, Dermot and St. James. And what you uncover about them isn't just your garden variety exploitation. It suggests something far more sinister. You'll find a ledger with unsettling notes about refugee trafficking. And the most disturbing detail comes from the prostitute Sweetie, who says Dermot props a teddy bear on the bed during his visits. If that doesn't raise red flags, then nothing will. In St. James's room, you'll find the exact teddy bear, suggesting a connection to the missing girl, and confirming that something horrific may have been happening behind closed doors. Players have speculated that this entire quest is a subtle commentary on human trafficking networks, their abuse of power, and the way predators operate under the radar of large institutions. The tone of the quest is intentionally dark. The dialogue is vague but suggestive, and there's no rescue and no closure for the victims. Just a system that failed and two predators who can be executed or arrested depending on your choice. Even more chilling is the fact that nothing else in the game really follows up on this. No named victims, no larger network, just a brief brush with darkness and then total silence. Whether it was intentional or not, the Coyotes stand as a top contender for the most disturbing side quests, and some fans argue it's the game's quiet talk about real-world exploitation buried under NCR red tape.
We warned you at Syracuse, and you persisted. You took advantage of us at New Canaan to drive us out, and like the dogs of Caesar you are, you followed us to Zion. And now you stand on holy ground, a temple to God's glory on earth. The only use for an animal in our temple is sacrifice. KALE WATCHA ne CONSERVA O. You understand me, don't you? Don't you?
During the final confrontation in Honest Hearts, Joshua Graham, the legendary Burned Man, shouts this cold line to Salt Upon Wounds. It sounds intense, ancient, and almost biblical, and it's never translated in-game. For years, fans have been trying to decipher its meaning, and while there's no official answers, the theories run deep. The context is clear. Graham is confronting the man who led the Whitelegs against the New Canaanites, his own people. His voice is firm and righteous. But what does the phrase actually mean? Forum users like Alpha Drop have taken a linguistic dive, and here's one of the leading interpretations. The phrase is likely a mashup of several languages, possibly Navajo, Shoshone, Spanish, German, and Old English, reflecting that tribal patchwork of Zion. KALE could be a corruption of Karl, an old Germanic word meaning free man or king. WATCHA may derive from watch or witness. Ne is similar to no or not in multiple languages. CONSERVA resembles conserver spare in languages like Spanish and Italian. O is likely an exclamation or intensifier. Putting together the phrase could roughly translate to, as king and witness, none of you will be spared. or more poetically, as God is my witness, none of you will be saved. Considering Graham's character a former legate of Caesar and a devout follower of the Old Testament God, it's a fitting battle cry. It fuses his past and present identities, Roman commander, Christian missionary, and tribal war leader. It's also a beautiful example of New Vegas' depth, how a single shouted line that's never explained can carry layers of lore, culture, and meaning.
I hope they never have to find out. Ready, Harry?
Yeah. No, wait!
Vault 11 is widely considered one of the darkest and most unforgettable locations in New Vegas. The Vault's experiment forced residents to sacrifice one of their own every year to avoid certain destruction. Eventually, the cycle broke, a civil war erupted, and only 5 people remained. When they finally refused to play along and expected death, the Vault congratulated them. It was all a test of moral resolve. And that's when things got worse. The final audio log in Vault 11 ends with 4 gunshots, and then a pause. You hear a gun fall to the floor, a deep sigh, and footsteps walking away. Only one person survived. Most players never question what happened to them. The logs simply end. The vault is silent. But deep in the game's files, there's evidence of someone cut from the final build, a fully defined NPC known only as the Vault 11 survivor. He was likely intended to appear after the final log, possibly wandering the wasteland or hiding from it. When spawned through console commands, he appears with the same model as Roy, one of the Vault residents, but no new dialogue or behavior is assigned. His existence raises a lot of questions. Was he meant to be found later in the game? Could he have tied into another quest? Or was he simply meant to be a living embodiment of guilt, wandering the Mojave, carrying the weight of what happened underground? Thematically, he represents something even darker than the Vault's twisted morality experiment. Survivor's guilt in its purest form. The man who didn't pull the trigger, but still lived. He was cut from the final game, but his footsteps echo through that final audio log, and his presence lingers in the files. A ghost in the code, carrying a story that still haunts the silence of Vault 11. Deep in the pages of the Fallout New Vegas Collector's Edition strategy guide, buried in a section most players never even read, there's a strange entry under character archetypes. A name that feels more like a glitch in the Vault Tech database than a real person. Gary 666, the incandescent death. He isn't found in the game. He's not referenced by any NPC, and yet there he is, a potential identity for Courier 6. Described as a relentless energy weapons trooper who melts minds into piles of ash and goo. The guide recommends implants for endurance, armor, and regeneration. It also suggests recruiting Raul, Arcade, and Veronica, a companion lineup that covers tech, Brotherhood muscle, and old world intellect. But the name Gary 666 raises more than just eyebrows. It gives memories of Vault 108 from Fallout 3, where the insane, cloning-obsessed Garys ran wild, echoing their name over and over and over. Some fans believe Gary 666 is a reference to the ultimate Gary, the final clone in the Vault Tech project, a mindless weapon of destruction who somehow escaped the East Coast and found his way back west. It's never confirmed. The entry is very tongue-in-cheek, sure, but in a world like Fallout where clones, cybernetics, and messed up government experiments are commonplace, the idea of a Gary Prime going rogue and turning into a scorched earth courier doesn't seem that far-fetched. Is Gary 666 just a joke for players who love energy weapons and chaos? Or is it a secret Fallout recurring joke? The idea that one Gary lived and he's the one you've been playing all along.
Haha, Gary!
Radroaches in the Mojave are a rare breed, literally. However, on the road to Primm, you can find one killed by a gecko, deliberately. What's interesting is if you have lived in Vegas like I have, roaches are actually quite common. More common than geckos anyway. See, radroaches were the classic starter enemy in Fallout 3, the first thing most players ever fought in Vault 101. They were everywhere, weak, creepy, iconic, but in New Vegas, radroaches are rare, almost extinct in the Mojave. Instead, geckos fill that same role. Early game threats, common in the wild, and tied to that desert setting. This has led to a fascinating theory, that this scripted encounter with a gecko killing a radroach is a symbolic passing of the torch. A sort of environmental storytelling moment, the gecko is the new radroach. But it gets deeper. Some players point out that this scene happens right around the spot on the map where you'd find the town of Roach, Nevada in real life. Roach is a tiny near-forgotten desert settlement just off I-15, just like this lonely bug in the Mojave. Could this be an obscure reference to Roach, Nevada? A digital ghost town marked only by the death of its namesake creature? Maybe. Or maybe it's just a radroach getting unlucky.
Strategic Nuclear Moose. This is hidden west of Sunset Sarsaparilla HQ and tucked away in a forgotten shack at the foot of a cliff. It's one of New Vegas' stranger and most obscure unmarked quests. It starts innocently enough. You stumble across Brewer's Beer bootlegging shack, which looks like any other rundown wasteland home. But inside, there's a locked cellar door. You can find the key to it in the room. Down in the cellar, things get weird. There's a chemistry set, a big book of science, and another key hidden underneath it. The key unlocks a hard-locked gun cabinet, which sits behind a door with a cryptic message, Strategic Nuclear Moose, and God said, let them have beer. A fictional beverage that's a nod to the very real Tactical Nuclear Penguin, a super high ABV beer brewed by Scotland's Brewdog. At the time New Vegas was in development, Tactical Nuclear Penguin was officially the strongest beer in the world, at 32% ABV. Pushing the limits of what beer could even be. So what's the real theory here? Most likely it was just a dev Easter egg celebrating the world-breaking alcohol. Some players have wondered if the quest was supposed to lead to a more unique crafting recipe, a hidden brewer NPC, or even a drunken side effect like Fallout 3 Nuka Grenade. But in the final game, it's just there. No quest markers, no fanfare, just a beer, a joke, and a locked cabinet. In the burning ruins of Nipton, in a booby-trapped house just east of the general store, there's a strange little note left behind by a man named Harry Collins. It's titled Declaration of Vital Essence, and it might be one of the most weird and cryptic documents in the entire Mojave. The letter is a paranoid rant where Harry claims that everyone in town, Mayor Stein, new settlers, and curious neighbors are all after his vital essence. He talks about locking it away, defending it, and refusing to let anyone else touch it. The house is filled with traps and explosives, as if Harry truly believed people were coming to take whatever his essence was. Of course, vital essence is never clearly defined in the game. There's no item called that, there's no quest, there's no lore attached to it. It's just a crazy note, a deadly house, and one man's obsession. But here's where the theory comes in. The phrase vital essence is a direct reference to General Jack D. Ripper, a character from Stanley Kubrick's Dr. Strangelove. In the film, Ripper becomes obsessed with the idea that fluoridation is a communist plot to sap Americans' precious bodily fluids. He uses the term purity of essence to justify nuclear war. So is Harry Collins a wasteland version of Ripper, a deranged prepper who holed up in Nipton wiring his house with traps to protect something that only ever existed in his own mind? Maybe. Or maybe vital essence is a code for something darker, information, tech, or something biological that Harry was really hiding. Players have theorized that Collins' know and behavior hint at early pre-war paranoia, maybe Vault-Tec experimentation, or the psychological decay caused by isolation. The game gives you just enough to wonder and then leaves the rest to your imagination. In the end, all that's clear is this: nobody's getting their hands on Harry's vital essence. Not even you. Hidden within the files of New Vegas is an entire unused floor of Gomorrah, the sleaziest casino on the strip. This extra level is often referred to as the Gomorrah backrooms. It's fully mapped with rooms clearly meant for customers, complete with beds, loot containers, and access through the in-game elevator system. But in the final game, you can't reach it. That's because the elevator script includes code to access the area, but the variable that would allow you to go there is deliberately set to an impossible value. Almost as if the devs wanted it to be there, but didn't want anyone to reach it. Was it cut for time? Or maybe it just felt a little too dark, even for Gomorrah. Even stranger is the presence of a super mutant named Angel in the game files. He's tied to the Omerta faction, and based on his configuration, he was likely meant to be stationed in this area. What was a super mutant doing in a mob-run casino backroom? There's no other mutant in Gomorrah, and no reference to Angel in the final game. His existence remains completely unexplained. There's also a placeholder map labeled Gomorrah Top Floor, which is visually and structurally unlike any other parts of the casino. It's sparse, sterile, almost unfinished, and some believe it may have been part of a cut quest, or even a dark narrative arc involving human trafficking or something even more twisted. Even Joanna, the dancer tied to the only real emotional story in Gomorrah, has early debugged dialogue and rewritten quest paths that may have once led deeper into this area. To top it off, Gomorrah is consistently misspelled as Gomorrah in the game's internal files. Maybe it's just a typo, or maybe just another sign that the whole place was thrown together, changed, and censored as the game neared completion. So what was the point of the Gomorrah backrooms? Were they just flavor, or was something more sinister meant to happen behind those locked elevator doors?
Just outside the Ultra Luxe near the Las Vegas Boulevard station, you'll find a strange note. At first glance, it reads like a review from some pre-war food critic. It praises the Ultra Luxe as a last bastion of real fine dining in a crazed hellscape with glowing descriptions of gourmet food, luxury, and exclusivity. But if you know anything about the Ultra Luxe, you know what's really on the menu. See, the White Glove Society who run the Ultra Luxe are heavily implied and eventually confirmed to be secretive cannibals, struggling to suppress their more uncivilized appetites. And that's where this theory kicks in. This note isn't a restaurant review, it's a recruitment pitch for new members, or a baited trap for their next unlucky guest. Think about it. The note smells of elitism, mocking poor farmers and Gomorrah sex workers as beneath the reader. It lures the right kind of ego, someone who sees themselves as above the filth of the wasteland. It even ends with a call to urgency. Dally not, a sumptuous feast awaits. Sounds fancy, right? Or maybe it's just a clever way to lure someone right into the kitchen as the main course. Some players believe this note is tied to the internal recruitment process of the White Glove Society. Others think it's the equivalent of an apocalyptic honeypot. A honey dick, if you will, designed to flatter the vain and then quietly carve them up out back. Outside the New Vegas Medical Clinic, there's a strange little symbol most players never notice. It doesn't look like graffiti or a faction tag, and that's because it's not. It's a piece of something much older and more cryptic. Hobo code. Back during the Great Depression, migrant workers, often referred to as hobos, used a secret visual language to survive. They'd mark fences, doorways, trees, or rail posts with simple chalk symbols to warn others about dangers or to signal things like "a kind woman lives here" or "you can get medical help inside." And incredibly, Fallout New Vegas includes these symbols, though most of them were never used in the game. The symbol outside the medical clinic, for instance, is a traditional hobo code marking for "Doctor Here." And if you use console commands, specifically placeatme 000 FD2D7, you can actually spawn that symbol on any wall you want. Even deeper in the files are more unused hobo code assets, quietly tucked away, never placed in the Mojave by default. This discovery led to fan creations like the mod Hobo Code of the Mojave, which restores and scatters these symbols across the game, turning the wasteland into a giant cryptic guide for those who know what to look for. So what was the original plan? Was the player supposed to learn to read these symbols, perhaps to track safe houses, hidden loot, or story hints? Or were they just environmental flavor that got left behind? Either way, it fits the world of New Vegas perfectly. A harsh post-collapse society where people once again rely on coded signs etched in dust and ruin to survive. We hope you enjoyed New Vegas' Iceberg, and we can't wait to drop a part 2, as well as a Fallout 3 Iceberg in the near future. If you've watched this far, then leave a thumbs up in the comments so we know who you are. We really appreciate the ones who stay to the end. You guys are awesome. Thanks for watching, and remember, enjoyed time is never wasted time, and we'll see you in the next.